And just wanted to begin here by this little slide here talking about cyber safety. It's interesting that we, even as master gardeners, were actually subject to a scam
That's right.
that hit us just a couple of weeks ago. And some email address purporting to give us a big donation reached out to us, and said, "Hey, we've got a big lot of money we want to give to you all. Can you give us our bank account information, and connect up with us and so forth?" And so it's exactly doing a little investigation. We clearly discovered quickly it was a scam, but this is the time of year, right, at which we're seeing a lot of this going on. So it's very appropriate here that we all be very cautious, given that so much of our shopping is online these days, and um, and so it's amazing how many. I was even just clicking on some links just yesterday, and my uh, spam protections were saying, "Don't go to that website. It's a bad website." It's, you know, the stuff's all over the place. Okay, so we are here today, and coming together here as Master Gardeners. We have actually a fairly limited calendar for December here. We have that board meeting today is at 1 o'clock. Everyone is welcome to join the board meeting. It's the same URL as we have for this meeting here. So everyone's welcome to join us here today at 1 o'clock. This Saturday is a busy Saturday. Not only do we have training, of course, at our locations across the two counties, but Ocean Shores has a wreath workshop going on. Peggy, Wendy, any comments about the wreath workshop? Any pitch that you want to share?
Technically, it's a Garden by the Sea workshop, but we do, we're in cooperation with them, so it should be a fun workshop. It's gonna be gorgeous. I get to
Very
miss it
good.
again, but
So there you go. And Rachel and others who are for leading training, any other comments regarding training for this Saturday? Any prep or any other comments? Support needed?
Well, I sent out an email asking folks that are coming to our training class to bring in any plant problems or plants or insects or spiders they want to try to identify, because
Yep.
we're going to be doing a real plant clinic, I guess, because it'll be actual stuff. That's about it.
Any other comments for Grays Harbor for the training up there?
We're doing the same thing, plant clinic, and the mentors are bringing in plants, and I think we're ready to go.
We'll take it from there. Okay, it's gonna be a busy day this week. Let's hope it's dry enough to make things happen.
I wish I could get one of my hydrangea leaves to you guys to use for your thing so people could see. I had something happen on my hydrangea on my porch this last summer. At the end of the summer, it turned black with like a sooty mold. Has anybody ever seen that before? I had never ever seen it. The whole entire plant
Hmm.
turned black.
Do you have some
And
pictures to share, Robin? It'd be great if you had some pictures to share.
I can try to find some. I did take some pictures of it at the time, and somebody told me it was called soot. Oh gosh, something about soot, and it. They said it's because of a bug that's on there, and then it creates a sticky thing, and then it turns to black soot, and you could literally rub it off with your fingers like black soot, and it even went down to the deck below it and turned the deck all black and everything. It was like the whole plant was consumed with this black sooty stuff.
A delightful home environment that you're sharing with us, that's for sure.
I know.
Remind it,
It's like I've never
it's
seen anything like this. This is horrible. And I sprayed it down with bug killer, and I sprayed it with, fungicide. I sprayed it with everything I could possibly think. But anyway, I'm just waiting for the leaves to die off, fall off this year, and hopefully when it comes back next year, it doesn't have it anymore. I don't know.
Well,
sense.
you should take some pictures and send them to Kelly, because that's how we get stuff from people,
Yeah.
from questions on our website. So take some good pictures of the stem now, because it sounds like it might be a scale insect.
That's one of my thoughts too.
And
You can
yeah,
send them to Scott as well, so we can look at it. At Grace Harbor too.
Yeah, I'll forward it if you send it to me, Robin. I'll get some pics out. This actually be a good exercise for us all.
yeah.
Can
Now,
you send it to Bridget also in Ocean Shores?
we'll do.
Thank you.
So 2026 is going to be upon us in just a few short days, and dates already to put on the calendar include the plant sale on the Saturday ahead of Mother's Day and the Home and Garden Show on the weekend after Mother's Day. Garden tour July 18th, that third weekend. At least I'm suspecting that, Terry, right? Is that for the
Yes,
date?
that's
Yeah,
right. Thank you.
very good. So get these dates on the calendar now, because it's amazing how quickly calendars start filling up, as we all know, because we're a busy people. Okay, lots to do today. We're going to be talking about the 2026 board, which you all elected at the annual meeting on November when we met at the Log Pavilion. We'll be talking about December to-dos, and I'll be introducing a Tapio moment that, of course, we're drawing from Don Tapio himself. And it more than a green thumb book. And it's amazing how much, how the nuggets he wrote decades ago still ring true. So Alma Cardenas will join us here at the end, and she's a master gardener out of King County, and she'll be talking about more trees, please. And you'll hear more about that as we get into it. So a reminder about who we are, all right? So as master gardeners, we conform to the precepts and are certified by WSU Extension for the Master Gardener program in our support of education to our communities. As a foundation, we come together as a nonprofit corporation recognized by the state of Washington and by the IRS, specifically to support the program. So we raise money to support our program efforts. And to that end, the 2026 board will be led once again by Mike as our president, myself as vice president, Gail secretary, Sharon and Vivian as co-treasurers, Aaron and Marilyn representing us at the state level. So Marilyn, thank you for joining Aaron in that role. Lori will take care of program support, and Team Terry, Robin, Rhonda, and Terry will continue with our external events. So kudos to that team as they go forward. Rita will be leading us as our director here in Pacific County. Your name here is available for Greater Grays Harbor. So we're still waiting for a candidate there. Helen, you're raising your hands there as you blow your nose. So maybe that's you. Maybe that's your role here. That's for sure. No, you're hiding now. Now you're going to hide. Okay. And Peggy and Wendy, just as we talked about earlier before the meeting began, Wendy just can't control herself and just thrives in volunteering here. So she and Peggy will be leading Coastal Grays Harbor. So lots going on, and as we play into this year. Aaron, of course, will be our sole coordinator at this juncture, with some assistance from Wendy, as we heard earlier. So Aaron, of course, is an overachiever, and we recognize that her shoulders are broad, and ever more capable. And Jennifer, of course, continues as our state coordinator, our state director, and we're still waiting official announcement of our faculty liaison. So a quick comment on it, Tapio in a moment. Received an email just yesterday, and I encourage everybody to take a peek at this and go to this website here that I have. The URL is up there. It's a great commentary on the fact that holly is invasive, and it goes into some great detail, by the way, talking about how English holly took root in every county west of the Cascades, primarily from a support that was given from gosh, is that forget the history? Yeah, the history. Yeah, it was a Seattle socialite, Lillian McEwen. Lillian McEwen, back in the 1920s, she led a push to designate Washington as the holly state. She sought to beautify Western Washington forest by adding English holly. So she envisioned a state where there were hollies in every forest and along every roadside, invoking the holiday spirit year round. So we didn't go that way with the Holly State Monitor, but it definitely took over. And I'm noting here that it's interesting that Washington State, by the way, they actually, in terms of even chainsaws, are no match for holly. Cutting it down can make it worse. You'll end up with dozens of new holly sprouts from the trunk. So the WSU extension, the forestry extension, when they go and visit landowners, they often take along their own lance with cartridges filled with imazapyr and injecting that directly into the cambium layer between the bark and the wood. So this is this is that since the lance and cartridges cost about $1,500 or more, Zober says neighbors sometimes chip in to buy the tools and share them. So it's a note about how invasive and how nasty holly can be. But I make the note here is that, hey, if you want year-round glossy green leaves, Mahonia, Oregon grape is a great alternative. Now, the other Tapio moment I wanted to share actually does come from Don's book. And at page 99, December of 2010, he wrote about lichens. And he wrote about this being a time to actually see and study lichens very intently because all the foliage is gone. So you actually can see what's all going on the plant. Don makes the point in the article, right, that when we're talking about lichen, we're talking about a combination, a unique symbiotic relationship between a fungus and algae, which create the lichen itself. It's an epiphyte, which means it contains its own chlorophyll and makes its own food. It establishes itself very readily on slow growing plants and slow growing parts of plants. And this is the key point. The key point, and I know we get a lot of questions about this at clinic. The lichen does not directly injure plants. However, Don notes in his article that because the lichen is accumulating water and it and has an area has an area that other insects might find as habitat, this actually could be problematic for your plants. And the key control that Don recommends is improving plant vigor by opening up the plant for better airflow and for pruning. Any other thoughts regarding lichen and lichen control? Okay.
Did you say, I might have missed it when you're talking about lichen? Did you talk about what you do with it when it's on your gravel? Like I see it. We have it on our gravel.
It grows. It grows on rock on almost any surface. Yeah.
How do you get it off of there? Like we have it out we have a big fire pit that has gravel around it, and the whole thing is now covered with lichen. And the only way I figured out to get it up is just to actually get down there and scrape it, like actually dig it up and
now
throw it away.
Don does talk in his book. He does talk about using chemical agents on lichen. So, in his book, he actually talks about that you actually can you can treat it with with chemical. But I would argue that you just leave it. Why not enjoy the fact that there are 20,000 different species of lichen, and just celebrate the fact that this is one of the most ancient plant forms ever.
Okay, I'll try to do that. I'll try to look at it and not think of it as like a weed everywhere because it's green everywhere on my gravel. But
Helen, you have your hand up.
It's a sign of good air. It means that you don't have a lot of air pollution. So look at it as a badge of pride.
That's a very good point. There was a time in Europe in which there was no lichen at all in Eastern Europe because of all the coal-fired energy plants that were there. And it was noted that there was just no lichen in all of Eastern Europe because of this, because of air pollution. So you have healthy air, Robin. Think about that, healthy air. Okay, December to-dos. This is from Oregon State. Key thing is that it's not cold yet, but when the cold is there, don't walk on the lawns until the frost melts. And this is a key. The second point is a point that Don Tapio often always made, that ensure that your landscape plants always receive water. And of course, this week we're drowning, in precipitation. But there will become a time, especially when the weather gets super cold out near Aaron's spot, right? At which you're going to need to water, because the plants are going to become desiccated. So drainage problems, take care of those. Check stored bulbs and vegetables and fruits for rot. Fungus problems, discard. Wood ashes, this is a key question we often also get at plant clinics about, hey, can I use the ashes from my fireplace on the lawn? And note that the point here is don't use very much. Spread it quite broadly, and very infrequently. And here's a good lesson: measure your soil pH, right? Because if the soil is greater than 7, right, you're just adding more potassium where it's not going to be needed. Avoid mounding mulching materials around the bases of trees. This is also common, right? Where this is a good time of year to mulch, but it's easy to have those mulch volcanoes, as they say. Pest monitoring, use chemical controls only when necessary and only after thoroughly reading the pesticide label, Robin. I mean, you were vigorously spraying that hydrangea, you said, with all your fungicide. Let's hope it was fairly you're specifically reading that label before you douse the plant.
First, I sprayed it with insecticide till it was dripping off of it, and then I sprayed it with fungicide, thinking something's got to help here. But anyway,
that's a little radical approach, don't you think, as a master gardener?
I thought it was radical, but you should have seen my plant. It was horrible. It was really bad.
So again, the key point here is that choose the least toxic options when you're treating a problem, and consider cultural and physical biological controls. Okay. Hey, good time to plant trees, right? Because it is there's a lot of great moisture out there. House plants, indoor gardening, poinsettias protect from cold. Don't let the leaves touch cold windows. By the way, the amaryllis, it's interesting. Amaryllis, those of you who get it for gifts and so forth, right? They can continue year round, and again, the amaryllis we got yesterday, I put it outside in the pot all during the summer. It's coming right back up again. So it's great. It's amazing how robust an amaryllis can be as a year round perennial. Okay. Okay. So other announcements and things coming on. I want to initiate the fact that there's an online state-led fundraiser that is available for socks. And this is there's actually a Bloom for Good online store. You see the URL there in the slide here. And I think some of these socks could be could be fun. So some great stocking stuffers, right here. And I mean, Aaron, do you want to comment from a state perspective? I mean, it's a fundraiser for the state foundation, correct?
Correct. I think we get like $8 of every pair that are sold. I bought a pair. They're really soft. They're a 75% cotton. They're a really lightweight sock. But they're nicer than I expected, to be honest.
I bought 4 pairs. I haven't gotten them yet. I think they're adorable.
Okay, coming at you. Okay. Hey, other announcements and comments. I want to make sure that we're getting it, that we wouldn't be doing Wendy and Aaron right if we weren't talking about recording hours. Even now, right, Wendy and Aaron, you want to tell us how important it is to make sure that we've got our hours recorded, even though we're just kind of edging up to the end of the year here?
Yeah, and the other thing is I sent out emails yesterday to people that have not completed their background check, so they need to do that. And the EP14 training, that if they have not completed that, those are both required to be able to even volunteer. And I'm going to do another Zoom, not that I want to, but I want to get these done, EP14 training next Monday on the 15th. I sent out an email to those people. So if you didn't get an email, you're good. But if you got an email, it's really important to get it done.
Okay, so pay attention. If you got an email from Wendy, make sure you read the email and you're participating, because it is super important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Required. Yeah. That's
Okay.
it.
And then another note here, just to make sure that you're also visiting you're visiting the portal. and checking the calendar and so forth and what's going on up there. Hey, other announcements from anyone here?
Yeah, this is Gwendolyn. It's especially with the events and stuff coming up next year. It's super important. Like the Facebook postings and share, especially, for the events and stuff to get the word out and make those more successful.
Well done. Well noted. That's for sure. I trust that everyone is a member of the Facebook pages we have, and is and receives those notices, because there's no question that so many of our community and so many of the public, by the way, does value and read social media, Facebook especially, in our age category, for what's going on. Other announcements, other news, other things to share.
This is Kathleen. I heard I had a phone call this morning from Grace Harbor weather alert that there's flooding. Grace Harbor, Aberdeen.
And you've gone back on mute, Kathleen. But yeah, we talked a little bit about that just before we kicked off the meeting. So indeed,
Oh,
there are
okay.
flooding concerns, obviously, to be aware of. And so it is certainly very prudent to be thinking about, wherever we have to transit today and tomorrow and this week, we probably ought to be thoughtful about, can we get there safely? And this is probably also a good time to be thinking about if there's neighbors that we need to be checking on relative to clogged drains or at or other hazards. If we can do a little help out on that. Other comments? Other announcements? Okay. Well, I want to go on and riff for a little bit here, but uh, ahead of ahead of ahead of Alma joining us here, because she's got a full presentation planned and we have a lot going on. Are there other thoughts that we need to be sharing here and as we get into December?
Kelly, it's Patty King.
Hi, Patty.
Good morning. I'd like to make a comment about the Mahonia Oregon grape. Although it isn't classified as invasive, I've found that it likes to spread. And it's very difficult once that starts happening because there's runners underneath the ground, and it can look maybe not that big of a threat, it's kind of smallish, but you see it somewhere, you don't like it. But when you start digging, the root system is quite large. And it's really difficult to get rid of. So that's something I didn't realize when I planted it.
This is so typical, by the way, of many native species, right? They may take a while to get going, but because they are native, they will actually go well, and they'll go. So Nootka rose, for example, Patty, that's
my
very
God.
problematic for us down here, as it's native, right? And it's quite desirable, for pollinators and so forth. But holy cow, once it gets going, it's a scourge.
I bought two little, about 4 inches tall Nootka rose at the native plant sale in Olympia a number of years ago when I planted them in one space, and they grew like an inch. And I thought, well, this is a dud. So I dug them up and planted them somewhere else on the other side of my yard. That is the biggest mistake I have ever made, because I have runners. I have found Nootka rose 90 feet, like it's in the far backyard. I found it on my side yard in the front yard. And anyway, it's a constant battle just cutting it back. So my advice is never to plant Nuka Rose unless it's in a pot, maybe.
Terry, you have your hand up.
Well, I'd like to make a plug for the other Mahonias, the winter blooming Mahonias.
Okay.
I probably have about a dozen of them in my yard, and they are blooming. They don't spread, and it keeps the hummingbirds fed. I don't
Oh,
actually put out a hummingbird feeder. I just let these plants and some other winter blooming plants that I have, including a Grenvilla, um, um, do their thing. You know, they bloom. The Grenvilla probably blooms, I'm guessing, maybe 10 months out of the year. It just never seems to stop blooming. And it makes a nice protected place for hummingbirds to hang out and feed. But the Mahonias are absolutely spectacular. I just love them. I planted the first one probably um, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I'm not sure. I've got about 4 different varieties of these different cultivars of the same winter blooming Mahonias.
There you go.
that
So Patty,
that's nice to know.
connect up with Terry, and let's see if there's a
Yes.
specific varietal or cultivar that would be more, more to your liking. We don't want to torture you with Mahonia, Patty.
Well, I planted it right inside my fence, the front gate, and I thought, oh, this will look so nice, and it does. But anyway,
Yeah,
it's
the most common ones that you can buy in nurseries are varieties called Charity and Winter Sun. And they do get tall, so they're near the front of the garden. But they're just very satisfying plants, and they do have those sharp, spiky leaves like holly and Mahonia.
mhm.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, I had somebody ask me, why did you plant holly in your front yard? And I said, no, that's not holly. It's, Oregon grape. And they had never heard of that. Anyway,
I've never planted one, but I've got a lot of them. But and it pops up everywhere. But if I don't want it where it pops up, I just clip it off.
yeah.
There you go. That's again our first lesson as master gardeners, right? Just go ahead and click it off if need be. Hey, Alma, you are here with us today, and I wanted to make sure that we have a full opportunity to listen to you and to participate with you. I've stopped my share, and you can begin your share. But I'd love for you to do a little introduction for yourself, and because your background is quite interesting, by the way, and I think we all deserve to see that, to share that.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. And Kelly, I am so thrilled that you invited me to come speak with you. I am thrilled to get to meet the community in Grace Harbor and Pacific counties. I am Alma Cardenas, and I am going to be certified Master Gardener in January. I'm just an intern for this year, but I have fell in love with the Master Gardening program. It has taken me a little bit by surprise how much I have, loved what I have learned. And one of the things that I got to do this first year was actually where I met Kelly, which is join the climate action team. I worked in technology, surprise at Microsoft for the last, 6 years. And I had the opportunity to use technology to help advance environmental research and do programs that use technology to help, solve the sustainability problem. But that was a long time ago. So now as a master gardener, I want to do everything I can to bring, climate action into our backyards, which turns out that it's so much better than having corporations do actions to improve sustainability. I think that the opportunity we have as gardeners to actually drive action, it's greater than we can think of. So I am very thrilled about the opportunity. And as part of that work, I have been learning about the climate action presentations, and we are going to be covering one of these today, which is the More Trees, Please, that discuss the Miyawaki method. And I don't know, Kelly, you had some great ideas of this talk for your group, if you wanted to share that right before, I get started, maybe to get everybody's, brains going towards that direction.
So again, so Alma, from it's great timing that you're sharing here with us here today, because we're in the midst, we're in the middle of our training, right, for our next crop of interns, our next cohort of interns, and this Saturday is actually the training regarding plant clinics. And many of the questions we receive at plant clinics, as you well know, are what can I plant here, or what should I be planting here, or how should I be treating my landscape in order to maximize, the ecological benefits as well as maintenance issues. And so it does speak to the presentation that you'll be delivering here about planting of trees and the importance of of canopy, not just in forested area. And of course, here in Grays Harbor and Pacific County, we're very concerned about salmon habitat, right? So foliage is a big deal relative to preserving stream temperatures, especially in the summer. And oh, by the way, there was an interesting rule that was just passed by Department of Natural Resources just this past week that extended the buffer zones by which loggers and timber folks cannot clear their trees. And so it becomes an interesting challenge for us in terms of how many, just how much foliage is actually going to be required, to support a healthy environment. Now, the presentation that you, of course, are going to be delivering here, right, is a quite interesting one in which, even folks that if you don't have acreage, you can still make a very significant impact by having, what you're going to call here this mini forest, this Miyawaki method here. But I'll let you take it over from here and bring us forward.
Sure. I am sharing my screen. Can you see the presentation okay?
Yep. Thumbs up.
All right. So let's get started. This presentation is part of the climate action team set of approved presentations, which means that we work with someone at the Washington State University team of researchers and biologists to review the presentation and make sure that the information we are presenting to you is sounded and is based on science. So there's no program of approved presentations was put together by Mike Baronto, who spearheaded the climate action team. So every Master Gardener has an opportunity to join the team. If you have a topic that you are really passionate about and that you think you could put together a presentation, you are welcome to do so. This presentation was not created by me. It was created by Gail, which is part of the climate action team. But all of us are encouraged to learn the materials and start spreading the word, which is what I am hoping to do with you today. So thank you so much for having me here. So since you guys are all Master Gardeners, I don't have to give you the backgrounds on our extension program. And I tell you, I think that we are so lucky that we have access to all that wealth of information from Washington State University, and that we can put together educational programs like this to spread the word. So getting started, a couple of words of acknowledgement. Gail Hackmansack put together this presentation inspired primarily by this wonderful book, The Mini Forest Revolution by Hannah Lewis, with a beautiful foreword of Paul Hawkins. So it's really a very easy to read book, and it is really great inspiration if you would like to, just get the book and read it. And it also acknowledges an organization which is a nonprofit by the name of Suji. Suji fundraises to create mini forest global projects. They provide an end-to-end service. They fundraise to get the money. They help procure the land. They help design the forests and find partners that can actually help implement the forest, and they track the progress. It's a wonderful website. A lot of the examples that I'm going to be sharing with you today come from this website. And you can go into the website and check the before and after pictures, which are, always very inspiring, and have, up-to-date information. What is the latest happening with this forest? So those are kind of like the inspiration sources for this presentation. If I can just ask you to start setting the mood for the presentation, to close your eyes. Let's close our eyes and let's just think of a place in nature that you love, your favorite place to be. And if we can think about the sounds, the smells, the visuals, and mainly the mood that this place inspires you. And I wonder, what did you think of? I wonder how many of you went to a forest, and I wonder if you did actually close your eyes. But anyway, the idea is that I want you to think about forests, and I want you to think about what you feel when you are in a forest. I think all of us now recognize the benefits of forests beyond the ecosystem services that they provide to us, which are quite important. They clean the air that we breathe, they clean the water that we drink, but beyond that, it's a sense of well-being every time you visit a forest, right? I have a saying that if you want to keep sane, your head sane, you have to go visit a forest at least once a week. The Japanese have a concept of forest bathing because they recognize the wellness benefits, right? Your blood pressure goes down. You experience a sense of ease. I always feel like, oh, I belong here. I think I return to the place that I should be, all this time, right? It's that connection with nature that brings us a sense of ease and peace. So it is really therapeutical. And of course, humans have changed land so much that we cannot even recognize the place anymore. So this talk has a couple of goals in mind, and is to advocate for the creation of mini forests. And as a second goal is to advocate for the conservation of our existing forests. And that includes, the urban canopy trees. So the priorities that this presentation cover is many of them, as you can imagine, on climate change, on protecting pollinators, on water conservation, on cleaning water, on soil health, on local food, because these are all the services that forest brings to us. But let's get started, and let me introduce the star of the show, which is Dr. Akira Miyawaki. He was a Japanese botanist who spent a lot of time studying weed ecology. I think it's a little bit ironic that by studying weed ecology, he formulated a very strong method for rapid reforestation. Anyway, Dr. Miyawaki spent a good amount of time studying the potential natural vegetation concept. And this concept, as it sounds, asks the question, if we were to have a piece of land without human intervention, what would be the plants that should be growing there? We are lucky in Washington State that we can recognize our native species. We still can talk about native species, but if you think of places like Europe or Japan, the land has been modified beyond recognition, right? I just got back from a week vacation in Hawaii, and in Hawaii, the vegetation history is quite interesting. More than 80% of the plants in Hawaii have been introduced. You cannot even recognize what the native species are. You know, I was disappointed that I was researching this plant, this plant, this plant, and all of them were introduced. But at least here in the state of Washington, we still recognize what are the staple native plants. So anyway, Akira Miyawaki worked a lot in this topic, and he did vegetation surveys all over Japan, where he, of course, discovered that what they normally saw in Japan as forests, right? All of those species were introduced a long time ago to create timber and the lumber industry, right? So the broadleaf trees that are the native trees to Japan are no longer found in common areas in Japan. And this intrigued him so much that he spent a lot of time doing natural surveys. He is known for creating maps of vegetation in Japan and Southeast Asia on existing plants, what is out there, and the potential natural vegetation. Where are the wildlife native species still there? So those two type of maps are very important, as you can know, to understand how we have modified land, what plants are there today, and where are the native species we can go grab seedlings from so that we can restore degraded land. After all of these vegetation surveys, of course, he got to work and he started working on restoring and trying to answer the question, can we find a rapid method for restoration? Is there a way in which we can help the natural process and accelerate it so that we can, restore degraded lands? So he established the Miyawaki method, and it has taken a hold. He has partnered with multiple organizations worldwide, and now the Miyawaki method mini forest is a thing. You can find mini forests all over the world. More than 1,700 forests were, built in collaboration with, his method. And one of the interesting observations and results of this method is that we cannot think of forests as acres and acres of land. We can also, consider the term of a forest in really small lots. And this brings us to cities and people that, are no longer in contact with nature, where we are seeing the urban problems, right, of megacities with urban heat islands, for example. Concrete absorbs heat from the sun and retains the heat from the sun. So cities, climate change, getting hotter, and then cities made out of concrete absorbing even more heat. It's getting even hotter than that. And forests have an important role to play in helping us address the heat in urban cities, right? And not to mention bringing to urban sites, trees and forests that connect us back to nature has all those benefits that we talked about. So, the bringing of forests in small places and urban settings is also something that Milwaukee worked a lot. Finally, one of his greatest accomplishments is that because of his contributions with all these forests, he was awarded the Blue Planet Prize in 2006. This is a prestigious environmental stewardship prize that rewards science that has impact in improving the environment on Earth. It was introduced, this prize was introduced in 1992 at the Earth Summit in Rio. And every year, there are awardees that receive this prize. One of the interesting things that Miyawaki did that in his early work in Japan, he got to work with private sector, interestingly. So steel companies, Japan is also known for car manufacturing with Toyota and Nissan. And this private sector organizations wanted to take account of their impact to the environment in order to lessen it. They would like to see if they could plant forests around their car manufacturing plants or their steel plants, right? And Miyawaki engaged in this private sector corporate efforts in trying to guide the creation of these forests around these plants. So this has become a thing where, Toyota and Nissan and these companies are helping spreading the world, and they help big time because they have the money and they have the land, and perhaps they bring employees to provide the labor, and they are, creating or helping create the spread of word of this mini forest in the private sector, which I think is incredible. And this brings us to one important organization and collaborator of Miyawaki, which is Shubhendu Sharma. So he was working for Toyota in India when one of these let's create a forest project came about, and he became intrigued and he started participating in this reforestation. He became so enamored about the process and the concept that he created his own company called A Forest. So he was an industrial engineer, focused in, optimizing the manufacturing line plant for Toyota. So he thought that he could bring his industrial engineering brains into the practice of reforesting and rewilding, degraded lands. And he thought, is there a way in which I can optimize it, or I can make it, so it is systematic and we can bring it to lots of people. And that is what his company, Alma Forest, does. They provide end-to-end services worldwide to help, establish these mini forest projects. And he was working closely with Miyawaki, kind of like Miyawaki was helping, making sure that he was true to the research. And the concept that he talks about is, could we open source, and I'm sorry if I'm a little technical here, but in technology, we have this concept of open source, which means I am going to develop something and I'm going to open it to the world for the world to see and use. So he open sourced the methodology of Miyawaki. If you go to their website, there is a series of videos that explain and educate, detailed work on how to properly follow the Miyawaki method. So he has been used as a consultant in creating these many forests worldwide as well. So important work that he's doing to, provide, that science in an educational format that is available to everyone. So let's get back. I know I'm giving a lot of context, but it's needed context. So let's start talking about the natural succession, which is the natural process that ecosystems are developed in when nobody intervenes, right? It's how life bounces back, right? And usually the natural process takes time. It is said that in order for an ecosystem to be restored after an event like a wildfire, for example, it would take somewhere to, 100 to 200 years to get a regular climax forest established. But this is happening in phases. When there is, nothing left or very little left, right? We first have the annual type of plants starting to come back. As the annual plants die, they create organic matter, and then the soil starts to regenerate. And that allows for, perennials and herbs to start growing. As they grow and they die and they, grow again, they start creating the proper environment for sun-loving plants to come. And after sun-loving plants come, if you think of a forest, you don't think of a sun place. It is a shady, dense place. Every piece of vegetation is competing for that sunlight, right? So, but that takes time. Those species like our, Douglas fir and our red cedars, those are our climate species, right? They take time and they are the last ones to come. So the last set of organisms to come in the natural succession are the shade-loving plants. So after this, takes place, right, we have a stable forest. So is there a way that we can expedite this process? So Miyawaki Method says, yes, we are going to help nature accelerate this process. And how do we do that? Well, we are going to plant climate species from day one. But in order for these climate species to thrive, we need to make sure that the soil is appropriate for that. So we need to provide soil amendments to ensure that we can, arrive to that humus-rich soil sooner than the 100 years. So with the intervention of, human management, we can shortcut the period from 100 years to 15 years to 40 years. And the big span of years, as you can imagine, depends on where you are in the world. If you are in a temperate forest like us, where we go through winter, which is a dormant project, right? Dormant period, right? It is going to take us a little bit longer than, say, if you are in the tropics. Or in Hawaii, I was just there. Hawaii is known as the eternal spring, right? So, and in Hawaii especially, they have water and sun, so life grows so much faster. That's why the wider variation. But either way, we can assist nature by making sure we amend the soil and provide the right conditions to also, bring climate species since day one. So let's just cover what are the principles of the Miyawaki method. So one of the big principles is in the plant selection. And this plant selection, of course, involves natives and the concept that I have mentioned to you, which is the potential natural vegetation. So in Japan, when he was doing his work, right, he found out that shrines in Japan are built in forests. And because you have a shrine and a temple, you have a sacred forest. That turned out to be the best source for native species because as they were built in shrines and temples, the nature around them, this sacred forest, had been little disturbed. So a big part of his method in Japan required him to go research all texts, all temples, and see what plants were growing in these areas. And he started collecting, seeds from these plants and pretty much started, a nursery so that he could have, seedlings that he could plant in restoration projects. You can imagine how much work this would have taken for him. So in some areas of the world, selecting native plants cannot be as is easy, as simple, at least for us. We still are in touch with which our native plants are. Even with that, you have to, keep into consideration what kind of ecosystem you are restoring for, right? So a slope or a mountain or a, wetland is not the same. So you have to think about, naturally what would grow here. And if you don't have the answers right there, you can try to survey surrounding areas to see what type of species would be appropriate for the place you're trying to work on. Another principle is that we are going to plant for maximum biodiversity. We are not going to create a row of the same species of trees like we usually have done in reforesting our Washington forest, right? Monoculture. We have now learned better that monoculture is not really that good. Nature likes biodiversity. There is something to be said about plant collaboration, plant competition, the creation of that rich humus network underneath in the soil, right? It's all about rich biodiversity. So the rule of thumb recommendation is to focus 70 to 80% in canopy and subcanopy species, like your Douglas firs, your red cedars, your, cascaras. I'm trying to think of what would be a good subcanopy kind of species. Our native oak, for example, we're going to take 10 to 20% on soft tree mid-sized plants and 20% shrubs. So we are going to create a rich, biodiverse mixture selection of plants. And we're going to plant densely. The recommendation is 3 to 5 trees or seedlings per square meter or per square yard. So that is 3 to 5 diverse plantings, per square yard. We are going to also be considering, the potential of, the return of some of the wildlife. Can we, for example, rebuild pollinator habitat and things like that? There's a famous narrative about forest in India where they built this, forests, and it was beneficial for tigers to move around, and it created an ecological corridor that allowed tiger biodiversity to expand. Tigers could now move from one place to another place, enhancing their biodiversity, DNA, and also, improving their populations because of that. So when we provide the right forest, the right context, right, nature would come. I'm sure that you as gardeners notice that when you work with nature, the birds prefer your forested backyards rather than your lawn backyards, for example. And it is the same concept. If we build it, nature would come. So the simple steps on how to plant a Miyawaki forest. First of all, you need to select a site. And usually these type of projects are community projects. Unless you are doing this in your backyard, which you could do, but, it would be good that you create your own, community goals. For example, what do you expect out of this project, this forest, to do for your community, for your house, for your site, for your place? once you have your site, we are lucky if we do not, but sometimes you need to survey, what is around it so that you can, select the appropriate native species for your site. This is a little easier for us, but nonetheless, I wanted to name the survey of the land. Usually, an ecology department can help us in this selection. Then you need to procure your seedlings, and then we come to the soil, which is my favorite part because I think this is where us as master gardeners have so much to offer. A soil test would be recommended. We need to see, what are the soil needs? Is the soil draining? Is the soil retaining water? What kind of soil do we have? Doing a soil analysis is necessary, right? And once we know what kind of soil we have, we know how we could enhance it, right? We bring organic matter, we bring compost to enhance the microbiology of the soil, getting that soil ready to take our climate species in. And then we come to the planting, and of course, we want to make sure that those new plantings have mulch so that we are not eroding the soil and we are protecting the soil from direct sunlight so that we can make sure that that rich web of nutrients in the soil stays in the soil. Usually these forests may require weeding and irrigation for the first 1 to 3 years, but it is expected that after 3 years, those seedlings are going to grow and they are going to create shaded environments that will no longer require human intervention. So what we expect from this Miyawaki forest is that we are going to create self-sustaining forests after the first 3 years. They require no maintenance. It's like it would be a wild place created by nature with human assistance. The survival of planting is really high. I think that Suji suggests an average of 97% survival rate. Different projects have different survival rates, but usually the rates observed are quite high. These mini forests, because of their diversity, of course, support biodiversity, and it is expected that you will see birds and wildlife coming back to the sites. These dense forests are multi-layered because we have covered, shrubs, subcanopy, canopy, and they have more green surface. They are denser, more CO2 they absorb. They grow 10 times faster. They develop deep root systems, and that does wonders to improve water retention and to improve the water tables. And, it is, hopeful that this type of forest will help us bring back habitat that has been lost. So it's kind of like a quick rewilding of nature. And a word of selecting and preparing the site. If we are talking about a community project, this should be a community decision and not to underestimate the effort required here. The book describes, how the question of the community deciding the site could be a long process, right? And how, many people might not be convinced that this is the right thing to do, or that this is the right place, or that, we should be doing this to begin with, right? There is, some thought that we should let nature do what nature does, and human intervention should not be. But we are at a point in which if we can help nature accelerate this. We need it. We do not have time to wait for nature in its normal standard way. If we can help nature, we should do that because we are degrading land faster than we are going to let nature recover. But anyway, just to say that site selection, it can be a project on its own. Site preparation requires, may require mechanical and professional assistance, especially if you need to build retaining walls, if you need to look into drainage, if you need to, work the sloping and such. So it's also a point of consideration. As I was mentioning, soil analysis should be part of this so that we know what we're dealing with, and but we as master gardeners know how to do this, right? We should, amend the soil as necessary to use compost and organic matter and to make sure that we have the right drainage. So we are creating a good environment for our plantings. And, we should use local as possible. We have good composting practices. Composting is a good practice also in Grace Harbor and Pacific counties, by the way. The point is that, we should go as local as possible, trying to get local mulch and local compost as part of this process. And as I was mentioning, depending on the site, we might need to provide for irrigation for the first, 3 years and weeding if needed, expecting that after 3 years, that forest should go maintenance free. So a couple of things that you may want to take of this is that this type of afforestation is for creating rapid forests in degraded land. Of course, this is not a method that we would propose to go replace an old growth forest with this, not at all. Of course, our number 0 task is to make sure that we do everything we can to preserve the old growth intact forests that we have today. And for those lands that have already been degraded, that we help nature with the Miyawaki forest to reforest them as quick as possible so that we can bring back biodiversity and the benefits of these forests to our. And they are, quickly to establish. They are using natural organic methods. They are denser. Projects will see that more biodiversity returns once these forests are established. And they are proven to have very high survival rates. So these are the key reasons why we want to, consider this type of forests. For the customers that have, land that used to be farmland and they don't know what to do with the land, right? This would be a great way to restore their land and create new forests that are going to bring lots of benefits of the environment, right, for the environment, and they're going to require no maintenance for the landowners in the future, which is, if you are going to own this much land, bringing that land back to provide this environmental benefits, biodiversity benefits would be ideal. And it requires an initial investment, but the investment in the long term will bring more benefits and less cost. That is what we're trying to sell here. And speaking of costs, of course. We have to consider the costs of establishing this site, bringing, heavy equipment to help us, get that preparation started. Of course, the cost of planting and the labor required to establish these plantings and the maintenance that they may get at the beginning. But if we think about the benefits that this type of projects will bring to the community, right? Clean air and clear water, right? That's just off the bat, right? We bring healthier communities. In urban settings, we help reduce the urban heat process, right? What I was mentioning before, that in urban settings, we have, concrete and pavement, acting as a little oven for us heating our cities, right? With these forests, we help address that and reduce that effect. We reduce the noise. We do water restoration, food production. We can bring wildlife back. We can build community. And one of the things that we don't think of if you don't live in a city is bringing people close to nature, right? People in urban settings, go a long time without establishing that connection with nature, which I think it's foundation for our wealth, I'm sorry, not our wealth, our health. If we do not have that connection, I think we lose part of ourselves, right? Because we are part of the ecosystem and that's where we come from. Anyway, so now we get to talk about, I am not monitoring the chat. I see a lot of chat. So I will have some time for discussion coming and have a little conversation and review, the questions you have, some in the chat. But I was thinking we can get to a few examples. This is an example of Clifton Park in Karachi, Pakistan. This project was built in 2015. As you can see, you can get creative and have these beautiful designs be part of it. This is in an urban area, and the purpose of this forest was to create a little reprieve from the urban heat that is experienced in the cities. And you can see how it looks after just 2 years. I believe that if you Google this in Google, you could see what it looks like today. So when we bring this kind of forest, for example, we are seeing that the temperature inside the forest, this little forest, right, can be 20 degrees cooler than the temperature outside of it. So you can imagine that that's where you want to be when it is so hot out there. The Netherlands, it's a place that took this process to heart. And in 6 years, they planted 111 forests. In the Netherlands, at the beginning, there was much discussion about the method and the benefits that this would bring. But once the first project was established and they were able to see the benefits, not only the benefits for the environment, but actually more to the community. In the Netherlands, they were interested in bringing ways to bring nature back to children. And they are taking advantage of these mini forests to educate children. This organization has created the methodology down to the teeth that they have a booklet that explains the methodology and in a version that is good for children. So they are involving, bringing in children to be part of the process, to learn something about biodiversity, something about the environment. And they are doing it in, small places like this place over here. It's a train station, for example, to help calm the heat in the urban setting where the train station is. Another environmental benefit for the Netherlands is that they are suffering from flooding. So when you have an established forest, right, it does something for water retention, improving the water table instead of water runoff in a beautiful concrete surface. The water has nowhere to go but to run off. Right? So these kind of forests provide a process to address flood risks. So they are still working on it, 111 projects in the Netherlands in helping educate children and helping address their flooding problems. Another project in Uya, Canada. I had to research how to properly pronounce Puya before I joined this presentation. Anyway, this is an area that is blessed with a lot of rain. But, after so many years of cutting down local forests and using timber for industry and for housing, right? They are in a place where water runoff is really, they are blessed with water and they are suffering from getting water. They are, having difficulties getting water to the community. So they had the goals of planting these forests. This is one of 5 forests that were planted to improve the retention in the water tables, avoid all that water runoff and help increase the water retention and the levels in the water tables. So this is how it looked when it got started in 2020. And this is how it looks just like after 1 year. And these forests evolve over time, right? So of course, when this type of forest started growing, they were very successful. Guess what the community started doing? They started cutting them again and using the resources again. So there had to be a re-education process with the community so that they can understand that in order for them to benefit, the forest needs to remain in place, right? Cannot be cut down just 3 years later to get the resources because you are back where you started. And now bringing us to a more local place, healing forest built in Yakima in the correction facility. The concept of this healing garden was to bring back native plants used by indigenous community, by the Yakima, in healing and food. So the design of this forests is a medicine wheel in the traditional Native American design. It was, of course, planted in phases. We have phase 1 in 2020, phase 2 in 21, and phase 3 in 22. And there is a phase 4 right here that was planted actually in 2024. And the idea behind this project was to take the correctional facility folks and provide them with the opportunity of doing this planting, kind of like a restorative process for these people, in addition to create a natural classroom for folks in Yakima to learn about the native species and their uses. So this is what it looks in 2023. The species for us that we kind of understand this environment is interesting. I think that the forest included more than 30 species, and of course it included all the different layers, shrubs, tree and canopy. Black cottonwood, scola willow, trembling aspen, wild roses, buffalo berries, native blackberries, camas. Of course, the camas plant is amazing. It's got a lot of benefits in lowering the glycemic index. The indigenous people have traditionally harvested lots to produce flour. So this is how it looked in 2024. This pictures do not do justice. If you go to the Suji project website, you have access to all of this. There's a beautiful map where you can go and read of each individual forest, and you can see all of these pictures and videos that are much better than only the one shot that I'm showing you here. And this was the phase 4 that was planted in 2024. And a little bit of the design used on this wheel, medicine wheel design. All of this information, as I said, is accessible on the website. And one of the interesting things of tracking these forests and the progress, for example, includes things like measuring the temperatures. You know, when we say that forests bring these benefits, what are we talking about? Well, 118 degrees here with a surface temperature of 97 degrees, 83 degrees here, 76 degrees here. So it is not what we think is actually measured and tracked. After 4.5 years, the survival rate observed there is that of 95%, and the average height of the trees is 10 meters. A little bit more of the different species. Trembling aspen right here, stinging needle, white rose hips, snowberry. Another Washington example is the Shoreline Historical Museum. Mike Peranto, our fierce leader in the climate action team, actually took these photos. Shoreline is very close to me. I need to make a point of going and visiting this museum for myself and get to see, you know, the progress. This is in October of 2003. And this is what it did in a couple of years. Their report as of this year is 94% survival rate, and the height of the tallest trees is 4.6 meters. Those are the examples that I have provided. As I had mentioned to you, they are, you know, much better exposed on the Suji website. There will be a handout part of this presentation that Gail put together that will have all sorts of links to, you know, the presentations, the websites that have been mentioned for you to review after the fact. Kelly, I'll make sure I'll send that to you guys so that you guys can have this handout to go along with the presentation. But now I wanted to see if we have time and you have the will to do some local talk. So I prepared for you a view of the Global Forest Watch, which is an organization that is dedicated technical resources. This is the kind of technology that I was telling you I was using or I was part of at Microsoft. How can we bring technology to help us, see what is happening? So we have powerful satellites around Earth, thousands of them monitoring Earth that can bring this kind of information to you. We can track, for example, what is happening with our forests. Are we seeing tree cover gain in blue? And the baseline is the year 2000. So based on the year 2000, if you see a blue dot here, it means that we have gained tree cover. On the other hand, the pink is tree cover loss. And this is again as a 2001 baseline. So if you see a tree dot, and actually you can, this is a picture, it's not the real map, but you can see, hit this play button and see how it has changed over time. So this is what Grays Harbor and Pacific counties look like today. I don't know if any of you can speak of any of the local forest projects. You had mentioned, Kelly, that each owner needs to present a plan of what is going to happen with their forests for the next 20 years. Are they going to grow their house, or are they going to use the land for something? I don't know if this would be a good conversation with all of you to see how we can take advantage of this fast restoration method of the Miyawaki method to maybe help turn the pink into blue, for example.
This is phenomenal information, of course, and of course, as we've been talking, of course, this is one of the WSU approved presentations that we as Master Gardeners are encouraged to share throughout our communities. And what you've demonstrated, of course, in the content here is how even with a small space, you can make a pretty dramatic difference, right? In your local, in your local ecosystem here. By the way, it is fascinating what we're talking about here with respect to the comprehensive plan. So Grays Harbor and Pacific County, Pacific County is a fully planning county under the Growth Management Act in the state of Washington, which means we have to prepare every 10 years. We have to prepare a comprehensive plan that looks out 20 years and talks about land use and land sustainability issues to support population projections. This year, it's that there's a new requirement that imposes upon counties planning under the Growth Management Act to include a climate resilience chapter. And so we are here I chair the planning commission here in Pacific County, so I'm intimately involved in this project here, and it has to deal with the fact that over 70% of Pacific County, by the way, is forest land. So we very much think about exactly what you're talking about here, Alma. Is that the forest not only as an economic resource, but also as a vital component to our environmental health. Grays Harbor is not a fully planning county under the Growth Management Act, but they have similar goals and constraints. And obviously, as a county with significant forest land, they also are very much concerned with exactly these issues. And Alma, before you joined, we were talking about the flooding that's going on here in both counties, just given this current atmospheric river that we're all experiencing, and the fact that forested areas, as opposed to open logged areas or open areas that have a lot of impervious surfaces, are quite suffering from all of this rainfall, whereas the forested areas, of course, readily absorb all this precipitation, and are handling it quite nicely. I want to open this up. Questions and comments for Alma. And Alma, as you'll see in the chat, we've just been sharing a lot of links and a lot of other information that we've been digging in, because there actually is for those of us unfamiliar with the Miyawaki method, there is a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of resources that are out there. Questions, comments for Alma?
I'm going to try to do something. See if I can bring my website here and just share with you the different websites, so I can give you kind of like a orientation of what these websites have. This is the Suji project. So when you come here, you can get a feel for the different type of projects that they have. But my favorite is coming here to the forests, and you are taken to a map where you can explore globally what is happening. And of course, I was taking a look at our state, and there are several. And by the way, you can plant a Miyawaki forest and not have it here. This is the forests that Suji has helped, coordinate and fund through their fundraising, right? So there are, I believe, 6 or 7 projects for us here in Washington. So, for example, you can click on this particular forest project and take a look at what the goals of the project were, how it was conceived, allocation, they give you great pictures of this is what it looked like when we started, and how it was designed, the concept goals behind it. And, this doesn't have an example of how it looks after because it's pretty new. Here it is, the Shoreline Museum is the one that I was sharing with you. In some cases, you can actually get to see the actual species planted, which is helpful. The report that I shared with you comes directly from these websites, but look at this images don't, the images I show are not as good as the ones that we see here. This is freezing a little bit. Anyway, all right. My browser is stuck. Let's see if I can get it. All right. Forest is the other company, the Indian gentleman that had created his own company. In this watch video here, you go to a YouTube library where you have a wealth of information and a detailed step-by-step of the Miyawaki process with this very professional built videos, right? And you can see the results of different projects from a forest. And it is before and after pictures. And you can see small areas, an apartment complex. Anyway, you can explore this. And the global forest wash that I wanted to show you, this is an animation of the tree cover loss on time. So this really is telling because this is what is happening worldwide. This is what we're doing to our land. So we are deforesting our land because of many reasons. We need to build houses. We need to plant food. We need to do so many things. But at this rate, degraded land is not good for our survival and biodiversity and our air and our water. So we need to do all we can with urgency to get us back to slow down those green dots. So anyway, now back with you all. I'm gonna stop sharing now.
By the way, that map is fascinating, by the way, and it is fun to play along. I put a link in the chat there, and I think it's just, so I encourage all of us to get involved. The thing I take away from this, Alma, right, is that a very small space. I mean, you saw that going back to the Shoreline School example you just shared, right? You don't need a large space to work with this. And the Miyawaki method gives you a plan, it gives you a process for how to go about establishing, a small natural area, even within a small space.
And you know what I think an important takeaway for all of us, where knowing where we are, right, is that for the long time we have been depending on monoculture reforestation, right? Not because we were bad people, but that's what we knew. But we have now know better and know that monoculture reforestation is perhaps not the best way to go. The best way to go is try to restore ecosystems to what their potential in nature is, and that takes, multiple diverse species and multiple heights and not one row of the same tree species planted, right? So if we are going to go to the effort, even restoring with the monoculture process, I can only imagine the effort that it has taken, right? So every time we cut down the trees, we go restore, right? It's a lot of effort. We might as well do it with the right species, right? And bring back, ecosystems and forests instead of bringing back trees, right? If we only see the tree, we don't see the forest. That is the key takeaway. We need to see the forest, not the tree.
I couldn't help looking up some of the books that you mentioned early on in the presentation, and I see that the Healing Power of Forest, Miyawaki's original book, it must be out of print because I see collector editions are there available for the low price of $180 for paperback. So yeah, I think some of the I'm surprised why his original book is not back in print and certainly not available, for a more affordable price. Questions, comments for Alma?
Feedback. Let me know what you think of his presentation as we are preparing to take this. Is it too technical? More examples? Not technical enough?
In fact, the question I would have for all of us here, does it communicate well to a general audience, to a public audience, to an audience that are not master gardeners? We've actually heard much of this or similar concepts like this. Have we seen it approach? Will this communicate in a general way to the public?
Kelly, I might add that I made a comment here about the tsunami resistance of it. And I would think that it might appeal greatly to the coastal community, where such a forest, as proven in Japan, resists the tsunami flow and slows the waves down. I could conceivably see the coast having a number of forests around there, if nothing else, to provide some bit of tsunami resistance to the whole coastal area.
So check that out in the chat. Randy posted that. It's very significant, right? 900 Japanese projects that have implemented that. Terry, you have your hand up.
And that is based on proven experience by the Miyawaki forest survived the tsunami in 2011, where the pine forests that were there got wiped out.
Terry, you have your hand up.
I guess I would be interested in a general plant list being included as part of the presentation for this area for Western Washington. Or maybe a recommendation for which site to look at that might have a plant list.
Yeah, it's a good point, Terry. It's a tough point.
Yes.
It is a tough point. As you know, we are probably thinking about microclimates, and we know how they vary from place to place. So the planting is so specific to a particular place, right, that I wonder if we could even come with a list. There is nowhere a list. I mean, we know generally this is kind of like our native plants, and we know which ones, but Every
I think,
site is so
right,
particular, right?
right, but maybe just for one of the examples, have a
The full
general
list.
plant list, not the whole list, but just generally what are the different plants that are in the various stories.
For example, this,
Yes.
good
Yeah.
point. I take it. Yeah, that's a
In
good
fact,
point.
Alma, to that point, I mean, the Western Washington University you suggested there, I mean, they have their website there talking about this forest they have there. So they certainly gone through their effort of building a species list and how they built that species list. That could be a good example to Terry's point, as to a good starter set for Western Washington.
And
If I might
now
add,
that we're talking about this, I totally forgot to mention this, but I mean, just to the point that plant selection is so important. One of the things that we might need to be thinking, right? So we have the potential natural, kind of plants that should be there, though, but with climate change, right? How much should we take into account that perhaps, right, we need to start planting, for, southern species that, are likely to migrate to, should we be planting California species or, trees sourced from South and Oregon? That also needs to be part of the conversation. We're talking about forests that are going to take 15 to 40 years, right? In 40 years, it's very likely that the climate is going to, be changing more. So that climate change topic in plant selection. And by the way, I have found that it is a topic of great controversy. Nobody is going to give you a clear answer. None of the universities or the researchers have the answer because that's a big question, right? How should we adapt plantings for climate change, right? We have experiments. Different research things are doing different experiments and they are observing different things, but nobody has arrived to a clear advice or clear conclusion on these are the things that you should be doing.
Randy,
Kelly,
do you
same
want to
thing.
comment on your post there? It looks like you gave a recommended Miyawaki palette
yeah,
for Ocean Shores.
well, I used Grok AI and I've been following the conversation and then going into Grok and posting various questions to find out pros and cons, costs, and everything. So then I posted the question, what would be the recommended plant grouping and, and density and whatnot for ocean shores specific soil type and weather. And this is what it came up with.
So it's a great
Certainly
example of how we can use
a
AI
good way
in
to
this.
start, right?
And Alma, as a Microsoft, a technologist, right? I'm presuming you support the use of AI, but you might support the use of, a Microsoft funded AI
I
engine.
support the use of AI with caution.
Oh yeah, I have caught many, many huge errors, but I also look at things. Does it make sense? And you start looking at the plants they've got here, and just yeah, it does make a lot of sense. Obviously, you would want to verify it, but it gives a really good start. Where to focus your attention to, and oftentimes brings up issues you might not otherwise have thought of.
Other
Yeah,
questions, comments for Alma? How can we make this presentation, more approachable, more accessible?
You might consider jumping into the meat of the presentation a little bit earlier than you did, and then weaving the history in as you're talking, rather than giving the history of Miyawaki as much as you did up front. Obviously, we need to know who this guy is, but try weaving it in a little more. So, within 5 minutes, people know what the Miyawaki method is and why it matters, and then you can. That would be my advice.
thank you, Gail. And what do you guys think about the idea of closing your eyes and, thinking of the forest? Is that something that everybody is like, oh my God, rolling the eyes and going like, oh, I don't like this type of presentations. I am.
I liked it. I liked it. I think it works because it takes them out of the moment and makes them think for just an instant about the points that you're trying to make. And I think that's good. Anybody else?
I think that's a good suggestion as well. I liked it because we were coming out of another meeting into this. So it just made you kind of stop and readjust your brain. So I thought having that moment to close your eyes and visualize something was really good. A good transition.
Thank you for the feedback. That one I was not so sure how it would work for some audiences or some audiences. So it's good to know that it's got the potential to work and take you there to set the mood before we start talking.
As you'll see in the chat, some of the conversations we're talking about the cost of actually doing a full project. And it's clear, just as you pointed out in some of your slides, that if you start getting heavy equipment involved, right, if this becomes a major project, you have to adjust drainage and change up soils in a major way, you could run into some considerable expense. So perhaps there are ways, especially for local presentations, to outline where funding might be supported, at grant opportunities that could be pursued, or other ways to manage cost so as to make this a more a manageable exercise.
I got a question for you. Would maybe a field trip, or maybe has anybody been to the Ocean Shores Community Club where supposedly they have a 0.15 acre Miyawaki plot? Has anybody seen that planting?
And some Ocean Shores people their heads are going east and west as opposed to north and south here. So any comments from the Ocean Shores folks?
I've never heard anything about it. But Ocean Shores people are confused about the community club and why we're paying a yearly fee, and you can have your house repossessed for not taking care of that. So,
well, now you know why. It's to support the planting of the Miyawaki plot.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I've never even heard of it before this.
But it's a good point. Has anybody been to Bellingham and seen what Western Washington University is doing with their forest up there? So I guess we need, so field trips and or promotional videos, right, are going to be significant on this. Alma, we need a drone. We need some drone videos to add to the presentation.
Yeah. I have had folks come I serve at the Redmond Saturday Market place, and I have had folks come and say, I have 10 acres. What should I do with it? Unfortunately, they came to me before I knew about this method. So now I have the answer and something that these folks can explore. They own the land, they no longer use the land. The land is just sitting there. They would like to get some environmental benefits out of it. This would be a great way. On the other presentation, which is creating resilient yards, I use the number of 40 million acres are privately owned lands in the United States. That is, us as homeowners own 40 million acres of land. This got me excited. When we have the opportunity to rewild those 40 million and turn, lawns into this kind of forests, that number is quite significant. And in that little map, we could be turning a lot of pink dots into blue dots. And that got me even more excited than all my 6 years of corporate work at Microsoft, talking to corporations on how and why they should care about the environment. Really, it's been a personal side of inspiration of the potential that we have as master gardeners to actually drive action, meaningful action, with the advice that we give, and, maybe getting one of those, homeowners to think about what they do, with their lands.
Well, that's a great coda to your presentation, Alma. Reminding all of us that what we do is important. We have real impact in our communities, and with that impact, can extend well beyond just our own landscapes and well beyond just our own console. Thank you so very much for joining us here today, right, and sharing
Thank
this.
you. Thank
And
you so much for having me.
And reminder that this presentation, amongst others, is part of the WSU State Foundation's catalog of presentations that are ready-made for us as Master Gardeners to go off and deliver to the public. So there's an opportunity to become certified in delivering these presentations and to have these as ready-made for public workshops. Okay. So Alma, thank you so very much, and thank you all for joining us here this morning. May you all think about where on your property parcels you can start your own little forest here.
May we survive the next atmospheric river coming our way.
That's right. Stay dry, everyone. And everyone, again, is welcome to join us at 1 p.m. At this URL for the Foundation Board meeting today. Thanks all. I'm going to stop recording now.
Thank you. Lovely meeting you.
Thank you.